All right, let's get right into it. There's a huge debate happening in Australia right now, and it's not just about what's going on overseas. It's about something much closer to home. Where do we draw the line between keeping the peace and protecting our fundamental right to speak out?
I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous, right? Can you actually be arrested for booing? Well, that question is at the very heart of this story. We're going to break down exactly how one man ended up in cuffs for doing just that, and more importantly, what it might mean for the rest of us.
So to really get what's going on, we have to start on the streets of Australia's big cities, where things have gotten incredibly heated and, yeah, sometimes violent during clashes between pro-Palestine protesters and the police.
Now, the flashpoint for all this was a visit from the Israeli president. He was officially here for a solidarity visit connected to the victims of that awful Bondi shooting. But, with the war in Gaza still raging, his visit was always going to be extremely controversial.
And the public reaction was massive. We're not talking about a small group here. In Sydney, at Town Hall, we're talking about an estimated 6,000 demonstrators. That just shows you the sheer scale of emotion on this issue.
Okay, so with anything this intense, you're always going to have more than one side to the story. Let's take a look at the two very, very different ways people saw what went down that night.
And what's wild is just how disconnected these two views are. On one side, you've got the protesters. They're saying the police were extremely heavy-handed, that they were just using their democratic right to protest someone they see as a war criminal. But then you hear from the police, and they're saying they were under attack, that people were throwing glass bottles. Their job, as they saw it, was to form a barrier, protect a foreign leader, and just try to keep control. Just people doing their job.
And this is where it gets really complicated. Look, no one's saying it's easy. Policing a crowd of 6,000 angry people, that's got to be an impossible job. But at the same time, you see some of the video from that night, and well, it just doesn't look great no matter what the context is.
But let's zoom out for a second, because the real concern here isn't just what happened at this one protest. It's about a much bigger and maybe more worrying trend: the government gaining more and more power and what that does to our basic freedoms. So this is the really crucial part. The government had already called this area a restricted zone. They did this using new powers they gave themselves right after the Bondi attack. Powers that let them shut down any protest they want and keep extending that ban again and again. And here's the kicker. This isn't about whether you support this particular cause. It's that once a government has these powers, they can use them against any protest. Climate change, taxes, you name it.
And really, it all boils down to this one simple, kind of chilling idea. When you let the rights of one group get chipped away, even a group you totally disagree with, you're setting a precedent that can one day be used against you too.
And if you want the perfect, most potent example of this whole concern, well, here it is. It's an almost unbelievable story about a local guy, a presidential motorcade, and a single sound.
So, picture this: the president's motorcade, all sirens and security is driving by. A man on the sidewalk boos at the cars and yells out one word: shame. That's it. And instantly, police move in and he's placed under arrest. So the question is, for what?
So what was the official reason? Get this: inciting fear and harm. That was the actual justification for arresting someone who yelled a word and booed at a car. For a lot of people, that charge just seems completely out of proportion with what actually happened.
And the source material just calls it what it is: crazy. The fact that you could be arrested for booing a car. It just brings up this really basic question of what a real threat is versus someone just, voicing their dissent. So when you put all of these pieces together, you've got the protests, the new government powers, this one guy's arrest, it paints a pretty troubling picture. And it makes you ask a bigger question: where exactly are we headed?
Because at the end of the day, this is bigger than any one protest or any one cause. It's about a very delicate balancing act. On the one hand, everyone absolutely deserves to feel safe. But on the other, one of the most important parts of living in a free country is the ability to stand up and say, I disagree with my government, or even, I think this law is wrong.
And that leaves us with this one big, lingering thought. Are these just a few isolated incidents we're seeing, or do they point to a bigger trend? Are we slowly moving toward a society with more government control over what we can say and where we can say it? That's the real question at the heart of all this.